Hi, I'm Erin Lefler. I am a licensed Lucasfilms merchandise artist, and today I'll be drawing for you my favorite character, Star-Lord. Star-Lord's very much my favorite character, by far, in any movie, any comic, and I always appreciate how he's dancing through everything, so I kind of got the idea that I wanted to draw him dancing because not a lot of people do that unless you're like drawing from the comic book itself. I started with a pencil sketch. I like to do it in a red color erase pencil because that way I can go back and correct my mistakes, but it's easier for me to see when I do it in red. And then I'm just going to go over it in ink. Whenever I'm drawing around in ink or when I paint in gouache, I like to put frisket film around the side so that way I can keep the ink and paint out of spots it's not supposed to be. So I like to start out with the background because a lot of times that's the most detailed part in a sketch, and that takes the most color and everything, so it takes more time to do. And that's the best way to avoid getting anything on the main focus of the picture, because if you block out the main focus, you kind of just get ink on the frisket film and not on your subject, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of ink splotches all over your character, and the next thing you know, you're going to have to start all over. Which happened a lot actually when I first started out using ink. I had to start over so many times because I would get ink everywhere because I wasn't using any protection and everything on my photos, and I was like, well, this is a disaster. And then once I started working for Lucasfilms, one of my coworkers suggested maybe use frisket film to cover over the spots that you don't want to get anything on, because that way it'll just kind of bead right off like water does. I tend to like to draw Star-Lord when I'm not doing my licensed work because I found I really connected to him, not just with like the music taste, because that's very much my music, but with the stuff he went through growing up as a kid and everything. I could really relate to some of the stuff and how he kind of just like adopted this group of misfits as his family and friends. I feel like the friends and family I have now, that's kind of like what I did with them. I adopted them like that. So I found that movie, that comic, means a lot to me in every single way, shape, and form. Plus, I also love Chris Pratt, so how could you not draw Star-Lord? Okay, so now that I got the background completely done, what I do is I peel off the frisket film because that will allow me to go in and to color the spots that I need to now. It's kind of like a big piece of tape, but tape that doesn't ruin your paper when you're done with it, so that's always a good thing. I like to go in with a smaller marker to do all the details on the characters, because it's like, if I try to do it with a regular brush pen, I kind of always feel like I mess up something on it. So I'll go in very lightly and I'll do several brush strokes with one of these, and then next thing I know I'm going back over it with a thicker one. I just keep working with it until I get it to the spot where I want it to be. Because it doesn't always come out the first time the way you might want it to. I always try to tell everyone that, because everyone thinks that a lot of the times it works where it's like first try and then you're done, and that's not the case at all with art. A lot of times you're working, doing multiple things until you can tweak it to the right size, the right look. It really all depends on what your preference is with it, but for me, I just kind of tweak it until the lines are the exact size I want it to be. I never expected it to happen, but all these celebrities, for some reason, started catching on to my work, whether it be through social media or through work. They would somehow find out about my stuff, and I started going to cons, and I was like, you know, I'd like to bring some stuff to the people who kind of inspire me on a daily basis when I'm not working. The first person I ever brought something to was David Tennant. He gave me like the biggest pep talk of my life. I was being harassed and it was really hard and I kind of just want to give up, and he's like, please don't ever give up. Please continue doing this. I'm so proud of you. You got this. And I'm like, well, if David Tennant's telling me I've got this, I might as well have something. So I just kind of kept up with it, which led to me starting to meet all the Marvel women. And I was like, okay, well, Marvel is by far, I think, my favorite thing. I love Star Wars, I really do. I'm very happy to work for Lucasfilms, but first things first, I am a Marvel girl. And so excited about Infinity War coming out. And I was like, there's not enough stuff of the Marvel women out there, so I wanted to make something celebrating the women of Marvel from the past 10 years of movies. And I just started drawing each of the women individually, and at the end of it I put them all together, and all of a sudden my Instagram and Twitter were blowing up, and I wasn't expecting that. I have Zoe Saldana retweeting it, and she's like, oh my god, I need this. And then I had Pom Clemente, she's like, oh my goodness, this is so cool, and Karen Gillian reposted it. So little did I know, within a few months, I would end up going to meet Karen Gillian, and I gave her one of the bags, and I hadn't heard anything back. And then I went and met Pom Clemente, and it was just the funniest thing because Pom has been following my work apparently for a while, and she looks and stands up at her table and slams her hands down, and she goes, oh my god, it's you. I was like, oh, I'm like, I didn't know you'd actually know who I was, but thank you very much. But I think the most exciting thing was I've always been a big fan of Evangeline Lilly, and I had been wanting to meet her for a while. I remember bringing her it, and she just kind of like, I don't know if she was shocked or if she was like confused why I would bring her the bag, but she's like, can I post this on my social media? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, I don't care. And I didn't think she was gonna do it. And then I got home from that con, and next thing I know, it's on social media, and my social media accounts are blowing up. And she had given me a copy of her book, The Squicker Wonkers, and I absolutely fell in love with the story. And I was like, I want to create something off of this. So I got tickets to go to Toronto Comic-Con, and I was really excited because they announced her as a guest again. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna bring her this piece I did of her in the Squicker Wonker form and the main character from the first book. So I brought it to her, and she looked at me and she goes, I've never seen somebody create something like this off my art. And she put up my work again on her page, and I was just like kind of blown away because I'm like, that's 2 times within the past X amount of months. And then she's like, I saved your work because I wanted to do it to announce my new book on SYFY. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. I wouldn't have expected that. I didn't think it would get any better than that. But then I also got to meet, you know, Michael Rooker and Dave Bautista, and they just looked at me and they're like, I've seen your work before. And even Sean Gunn, he's like, if you come and see me again, can you draw me and my cat? And I was like, I've never drawn really a cat, but okay, I can try my best. So I'm still working on that. So for these little bits that I get to talk to these celebrities and they actually recognize my work, it's like one of the coolest things. Like, I wouldn't expect it, but honestly, it just kind of, it's very humbling for me because I always wanted that when I was a little kid, but I never dreamed it would actually happen. Even to get to like work for Lucasfilms doing licensed merchandise art, I was never expecting that. I had always grown up watching Star Wars. I was a big Star Wars nerd. I always wanted to be like Luke Skywalker. I don't know why, but I always loved it. I didn't believe it at first. I thought, oh well, this is kind of a hoax. This isn't going to be a thing, but it ended up being a thing. I had just submitted my portfolio to Marvel, and I was really hoping to do something for them. My dream has always been to make a Guardians of the Galaxy merchandise line or Avengers merchandise line. You know, Star-Lord is definitely my favorite character, but also like Loki, especially Tom Hiddleston's version of Loki, saved my career quintessentially because I was getting a lot of harassment doing my work, and I almost gave up doing it. So if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. Star Wars has afforded me a very, very good opportunity, even though it started out with a negative side. I got to experience the negative side of the Star Wars fandom. A lot of fanboys and fangirls who weren't too fond of The Last Jedi decided that it would be a good idea to start harassing me online. And I was like, I can do one of 2 things with this. I can sit and do nothing, or I could take David Tennant's advice and do better than what they're saying I am. As soon as I started telling people, like, this is happening, this is going on, I was getting this outpour of people saying, I've been through that and I didn't know what to do, or I'm going through that right now and I'm scared, I don't feel like I want to live anymore. And it just broke my heart to hear so many people saying that. So I ended up creating Force Against Cyberbullying. I wrote this long thing and I put it on my Twitter with the official campaign logo and everything. And my Twitter starts blowing up and I'm like, what in the world is this? And I see Mark Hamill retweeted it and liked it. And I was like, oh wow, Luke Skywalker himself has just supported my anti-cyberbullying campaign. So I feel like it's kind of like what I was meant to do, because I've been able to help a lot of people either who are going through it or help people who are facing it. In general, most of the internet can be a pretty good place when we put our minds to it. And I think that's what the campaign's really about, is putting our minds to it, being the better side of the internet, and being like this giant support group for anyone who's going through it. So art and words and music should be about, it should be about helping people out, standing together with one another. And I think that's why I ended up loving getting to work for Star Wars so much because now it's something that I can use to help others out, and it's just an amazing feeling when you hear these stories come back to you of, your art helped me do this, your words gave me the strength to do this, and I stood up for myself, and it's a really cool feeling. So when I get towards the end of it, everyone's like, there's splotches everywhere. Well, that's an easy thing that actually goes back and being fixed. That actually helps me out that there's splotches on these, because I like to add like, almost kind of like battle wounds or cuts and stuff to the fabrics, because you know, you're a superhero, you're not coming out of something looking like it's just fresh out of the closet. It's never fresh out of the closet. When people ask me like, how long does it take you to do your work? And I'm like, it all depends really, because if it's something I'm really passionate about, it can take me anywhere from like 30 minutes to 3 days. It really all depends on what I'm working on or how much time I want to spend on something or if I really like it. And everyone always thinks that they're like, but do you rush anything? I'm like, I try not to, because if you rush stuff, it's not going to come out the right way. So that's my biggest tip I can give to anyone is do not rush your work. So just try to take your time with your work so that way it comes out the best it can possibly be. I grew up a very big Disney fan. I had a lot of Disney roots in my family, and growing up around that, it just kind of like impressed upon me the Disney style, but I also grew up reading the Marvel comics, so I just kind of combined the two of them because I wanted to do like a Disney-esque style, but with a comic book influence. I wanted the movement of the comic books, but the look of the Disney characters. So I try to keep everything looking pretty much cartoonish, go in and find little details I can add to make it a little more realistic, whether it be the movement, little rumples in clothes, tears, little design patterns, whatever it is. I just like to make it as detailed but as cartoonish as possible with my work. And that's it. I'm Erin Lefler, and I just drew Star-Lord for SYFY WIRE.